Hey everybody, Mr. The Fanboy here. This is my salute of one of my all-time favorite eras. This is actually one of my all-time favorite eras of the WWE, and that is the new generation era. Pretty much the early to mid 90s to mid or late 90s is my favorite era of WWE. Pretty much 1990 to 1997 is my favorite era of WWE. I consider the new generation era to have started in 93, from 93 to 97. Some people say 94, but I consider the new generation era to be 93 and 97 because if you look at from 93 to 97, because if you look at WrestleMania on one of my favorite WrestleManias, WrestleMania 8, in the mid card, you see Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart and Undertaker. But in the main events, you see Hulk Hogan, Sid, Ric Flair, and Macho Man. See, WWE that the, the they celebrated the past by having the main event, but they also showcased and highlighted their future, that was on one of the best of WrestleMania tapes. And in WrestleMania 9, another favorite WrestleMania of mine. This is widely considered to be one of the. This has a mixed reception amongst WrestleMania fans. Some consider it good. Some and most consider it to be one of the worst WrestleManias of all time. I saw this on tape and I thought, and this is one of my all time favorite WrestleManias. You have Michaels. The previous year he was wrestling Tito Santana. Now he's wrestling in WrestleMania 9. He's wrestling Tatanka for the Intercontinental Championship. Then you got in the main event, then you got Bret the Hitman Hart wrestling Yokozuna for the Heavyweight Championship. That's why I consider this. And at the Royal Rumble, early in the Royal Rumble before WrestleMania, you have Bret Hart defending it against Razor Ramon, who also was a big part of the new generation era. So I consider the new generation era to be from 93 till 97, till 97, till late 97. No, to 90, early 97. I consider WrestleMania 13, which I'm going to get to later on in this video. I consider that to be the beginning of the Attitude Era, even before Vince came and announced that the Attitude Era had started. But like I said, I just love WWE in the early to mid 90s. I love the colorful sets versus the bland, boring sets we have today. I love the colorful sets. I love the larger than life characters. And yes, they don't get credit for it, but awesome wrestling. I love how wrestlers like Bret the Hitman Hart and Mr. Perfect show that technical wrestling can be entertaining. And Bret Hart, well, not really, because he didn't draw as much as he should, but he drawed internationally. Bret Hart showed that you could have technical wrestling in the main events. In the main events, because like I said, this was my all time favorite era of WWE. I think the Attitude Era, which I'm gonna bury in the next video. I think the Attitude Era is one of the most overrated eras of all time. I also don't like the Hogan era, even though I did enjoy even though I do enjoy it today, and I was a huge fan of it when I saw it as a child, when I saw the tapes and stuff and segments and stuff as a child. But as an adult, I just don't like that era. That era is just too hokey. This era, the new generation era, was much better. The Attitude Era, that was too. That just made wrestling look even worse. That just made wrestling look bad. The Attitude Era, it was entertaining, and it still is entertaining. If a lot of those Attitude Era stars were to come back today, I would definitely mark out. Come to think of it, one of the reasons I'm not watching WWE is because a lot of those stars like Ken Shamrock and them won't be back in WWE. So you ain't watching WWE. And um next is oh yes, the so yeah, and I like the early part. I like the ruthless aggression era, especially the early part, 2005 till 2000 till mid 2008. I didn't like, but that was way better than what we have today. pretty much mid 2000, then the crappy PG era we have today. But going back to the new generation era. So like I said, I consider new generation era to have started in 1993, and the talent, the talent you had in this era. Bret the Hitman Hart, Owen Hart, Shawn Michaels, Undertaker, Even though I think Undertaker is overrated. Bam Bam Bigelow, Marty Jannetty, even though he later got released for drug problems. Um, Barry Horowitz, yes, even jobbers were more entertaining than WWE wrestlers today. Um, Barry Horowitz, Sean Waltman, 123 Kid, Razor Ramon, Razor Ramon. Uh, I like Kevin Nash. I liked his Diesel character, but I thought he sucked in the ring. But Diesel, Diesel, Diesel. Yeah, international talent like Hakushi. Kane was in this era as Isaac Yankem. I didn't like really didn't like this gimmick. I didn't like this gimmick all that much. Then The Rock, Rocky Maivia. Now I love The Rock when he was Rocky Maivia. A lot of people didn't like it because he was a he was cheesy and a babyface, but I like The Rock here because some of his best I'm talking wrestling work, was in this era. He was a great athlete and a solid tactician in the ring, entertaining, but just cheesy and nobody liked him. But I love Rock in this era. And I love the whole development of Rock's character throughout his career. But I love Rock in this era. He has so many exciting matches, man. Triple H was in this era. This is back when he was good. I hate Triple H so much today that it's hard. I often forget that there was a time where he was good. Where I was actually entertained by Triple H. Where I would tune in television to see Triple H get his butt kicked. Now he's one of the reasons I don't even watch WWE anymore. But like I said, awesome era. Then like I said, even jobbers from this era were more entertaining. Like I mentioned, Barry Horowitz, Duke the Dumpster Drozy, John Pierre Lafitte. These were like crappy gimmicks, but these guys were like awesome. These guys were awesome wrestlers in the ring. Duke the Dumpster Drozy and John Pierre Lafitte, the Pirate guy. They on the January 16th, 95 edition of Raw. They had a phenomenal match. Then you had Mabel and Mo. You had Mabel and Mo mid on a mission with Oscar. Awesome tag team. They were ahead of their time. Where at the time you had like street hip hop people before that era came, which was the Attitude Era. They were ahead of their time. Vince had to ruin this by splitting them up and giving Mabel a singles push. I'm a huge fan of Mabel. He had no business going for the heavyweight title. Not as great as he was then. Um, I mentioned the Beast from the East, Bam Bam Bigelow, who was awesome. Yet this guy with tattoos on his head. Yet this guy with tattoos on his head with this cool like football tight jumpsuit. This guy doing cartwheels, moonsaults, and was just a phenomenal brawler. Had some of the best punches in the business. Oh man, um, yeah, Yokozuna, who in my opinion was a great heel, was a great heel. Yeah, Yokozuna. Then you had um so like I said, the new generation alien Stone Cold Steve Austin debut, the Ringmaster. I actually enjoyed the Ringmaster and the Million Dollar Man. We had Teddy DiBiase as his manager. Jake the Snake. Some of his best work, in my opinion, was during this period. I enjoyed his feud with Macho Man in the early '90s. His feud with Macho Man in the early '90s, and he had a good run here. I especially loved his rags to riches underdog story in the King of the Ring '96, where Austin, when Austin beat him, Austin cut that memorable promo on Jake the Snake Roberts, and then of course oh yes, Vader. Even though he was severely misused during this period, but he was um he was awesome too. Had a lot of awesome matches. I never liked the Goldust character. I never liked the Goldust character. I'm a huge fan of Dustin Rhodes, but I liked him as always as Lone Star Dustin Rhodes, and I love the Black Rain thing they did in TNA, even though that was voted worst gimmick ever. I actually enjoyed the Black Rain gimmick, but I never really liked Goldust. But once again, ahead of his time. Goldust was ahead of its time. This was before the Attitude Era, and this is where I first saw Rowdy Piper. Um, then so like I said, so much talent here. And I love Vince as much as I hate Vince McMahon. I loved him as a babyface commentator, even though that's the total opposite of how it was in real life. Where in real life he was a heel in the media for all the stuff he was accused of. And I love Jerry King Lawler as a heel. He was Jerry King Lawler here was so much better here than he is today. Um, Jr. was good as always. So like I said, just like an awesome time. And like I said, I love the arenas, the sets, the cool set design, and the colorful, cool, larger than life sets. They actually made wrestling shows feel epic. A lot of these shows really weren't that good, but because of their Titantrons and because of the wrestling on the show, it made them feel good. Like I love the In Your House thing. That was awesome, man. It's way better than these bland pay-per-views today. Money in the Bank, TLC. These pay-per-views named after matches. The In Your House eras, which were the lower price pay-per-views that happened in between Royal Rumble, WrestleMania, King of the Ring, SummerSlam, Survivor Series. Like I said, awesome stuff. Lots of awesome feuds during this period, like Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels during their feud. You had the first one in the early '90s with Bret Hart and with Bret Hart was a face and Shawn Michaels was a heel, and his it was talking it was Shawn Michaels was harassing Bret Hart's family. It led to that awesome Survivor Series 1993 elimination match with Bret Hart, with Bret Hart, Owen Hart, Bruce Hart, and I keep forgetting the other Hart. Bruce Hart, Bruce Hart versus Shawn Michaels and his Knights, which I think one of them was a guy named Jeff Gaylord, and another one I think was I think Gordy was one of them, and I think another one was Barry Horowitz. Um, Shawn Michaels' Knights. So that was an awesome feud right there. Shawn Michaels and Marty Jannetty, when Marty Jannetty beat him on Raw for the Intercontinental Championship, when Michaels, of course, turned on him on that episode of that edition of the Barbershop, Brutus the Barber Beefcake's Barbershop, when Shawn Michaels sweet shit music to him and threw him through the wall, and man, Bobby the Brain Heenan was hilarious, man, saying he flew through Marty Jannetty flew through the window when he threw him through the when Shawn Michaels threw Marty Jannetty through the window. Then of course you had 1 2 3 Kid picking up a surprise victory over Sean Waltman picked up a surprise victory over Razor Ramon becoming the 1 2 3 Kid, and then later on this would lead to Razor Ramon's face turn, face turn. Then of course you had the Bret Hart Owen Hart feud, which actually started at the Survivor Series pay-per-view when Owen Hart got eliminated. When Owen Hart was the only Hart to get eliminated, and then you had the emotional Bret versus Owen feud, and this was in a PG like era. You had an edgy brother versus brother feud in a PG in a PG era, then which led to an awesome, phenomenal match at WrestleMania. Then of course you had the awesome SummerSlam '94, the awesome cage match at SummerSlam. Then of course you had I hate celebrity involvement in wrestling, but this was one of my favorite involvement of celebrities, and that was Bam Bam Bigelow and Lawrence Taylor. I'm still today mixed about having Lawrence Taylor go over on Bam Bam Bigelow at WrestleMania 11, but the match and the feud was awesome. And this was one of all the dumb things Vince McMahon did during this era. This is one of the things he actually did right. It actually saved his butt. It actually saved his butt in his feud with WCW, because this pay per view, as much as people hate it, drew a lot of money. That Lawrence Taylor Bigelow feud drew lots of mainstream attention. Then of course you had what else? Oh yes, then of course you had the second feud between Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart, when of course they were this time they were both faces, and they both met at WrestleMania 12 in the awesome Iron Man match. Awesome wrestling clinic by these two, with Shawn Michaels defeating Bret Hart to achieve his boyhood dream to become the WWE champion, and Bret Hart taking time off, and then Bret Hart having that awesome feud with Austin, which of course kick-started the Attitude Era, which ended with Bret Hart, which at WrestleMania 13 which ended in a double turn with Bret Hart becoming the heel and Austin becoming the face. And then Michaels and Bret Hart would later feud later that year, this time with Shawn Michaels. Well, first it was Shawn Michaels teaming up with Austin, and Bret Hart was the heel. So then later on that year, Shawn Michaels would turn heel, and Bret Hart would still be the heel, but would be the face in Canada, and they would feud. And this right here made wrestling. The Bret Hart Shawn Michaels feud made wrestling seem real, as was the Bret Hart Stone Cold feud. I was actually surprised years later when Bret Hart and Stone Cold, when they said that's how they that when I saw that they were all when I saw they were always friends behind the scenes, but on screen they were enemies. I was actually surprised, because they had me convinced that these guys were enemies. I was actually surprised they were friends and cool with each other on the outside of the ring. And so like I said, just like I said, lots of awesome, exciting matches during this period. You had Bret Hart versus Jeff Jarrett on one of the editions of Raw. I think it was a February edition of Raw. Bret Hart versus Jeff Jarrett. Um, on that same show, you had Bob Holly and the Smoking Guns. Bob Holly and 1-2-3 Kid versus the Smoking Guns. Bob Holly, that's another awesome talent during this period. And the Smoking Guns, Billy and Bart Gunn, awesome talents. The Road Dogg, I didn't like the roadie gimmick, but he was good during this period too. And you had Barry Horowitz surprise win over Mr. Perfect. Horowitz wins. Horowitz wins, and you had Just Incredible Mondo Antonio. I didn't like his gimmick. You had Marty Jannetty this time coming back as a heel, and him and Al Snow, who was wrestling as Leaf Cassidy as the New Rockers. They were awesome. I wish they would have got a push, but they were never the success of the original Rockers. So awesome awesome. This was like such an awesome time period. You had awesome WrestleManias. Like I said, WrestleMania 11 was widely considered one of the worst WrestleManias of all time, but it's one of my favorites. I enjoyed the Bam Bam Bigelow Lawrence Taylor match. I also enjoyed Shawn Michaels and Diesel, even though no one in the audience appeared to care for the match. I thought that was one of Diesel's best matches in WWE, and he had a lot of terrible matches in WWE. Kevin Nash, Diesel. I always thought he was better at WCW. WCW. Um, um. Then of course you had Razor Ramon and Jeff Jarrett Intercontinental Title match. Awesome match. I always loved it when Jeff Jarrett and Scott Hall wrestled. They had awesome chemistry. Then of course you had then of course Then of course you had sorry kind of sick today. Then of course you had what else? What else? What else? Oh yes, you had Lex Luger and British Bulldog, the Allied Powers, defeating the Blue Brothers, who were actually the Harris Brothers. Then you had Yokozuna and Owen Hart defeating the Smoking Guns to a huge pop despite being heels. The return of Owen Hart, man. And and like I said, awesome period. Then of course WrestleMania 10. Yeah, I mentioned the awesome Bret Hart Owen Hart match. You also had an underrated match between, I think it was Crush, yeah, Crush and Macho Man, and the late Macho Man. Man on a Mission had an awesome match. I think they wrestled the Quebecers, and then then of course you had Shawn Michaels and Shawn Michaels and Razor Ramon and Shawn Michaels and Razor Ramon in one of the first ladder matches in that company. In that company, I remember Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart competing. What I think it was in Canada somewhere. I think at a house show. But the first match, the first match there, the first match there, the first match in can the first match there, in in a house show I think. But yeah, in the first they had a ladder match in at WrestleMania 10 at WrestleMania 10. I think that was the first one of that company, and it was awesome. Then of course Lex Luger and Yokozuna, Mr. Perfect screws Lex Luger. Then of course you got the main event, Bret Hart and Yokozuna, with Bret Hart defeating Yokozuna and everybody coming out to cheer the lift Bret Hart up as he won. Awesome moment in wrestling history. Like I said, this right here, like I said, was an awesome pay per view. The storyline that led up to this. I didn't care much for Royal Rumble '94, with the exception of the Royal Rumble '94 itself, with Bret Hart and Lex Luger both of their feet touching the floor, and neither winning. And there was no triple threat or three-way dances at this time, so it led to it led to Yokozuna defending his title twice that night. So twice that night in the match between Yokozuna and Lex Luger. The match between Yokozuna and Lex Luger. Lex Luger's entrance was awesome, and Burt Reynolds the opening ring announcement was awesome, man, and the crowd was heavy into that match. Wasn't a technical match at all. Lex Luger, he was never really that good of a wrestler, but he was an awesome fighter and worker. The punches and clotheslines he was believable, man. Man. Um awesome, like I said, awesome match. Yeah, WrestleMania 12 with the first the opening match, which was Owen Hart, British Bulldog, and the Vader representing Team Cornette versus Ahmed Johnson, another awesome wrestler in the new generation era, whose personal problems and injuries ruined his career. He claims Vince was racist. I disagree. I feel this guy would have eventually been a world heavyweight champion, but um that injury, that kidney injury ruined his momentum. When he came back, but he after that awesome feud with Farouk, another awesome feud, the feud with him and Farouk. After that awesome feud with him and Farouk, he just got lost in the shuffle. He just got lost in the shuffle after that. No one really cared about Ahmed Johnson after that. But his awesome feud with so yeah, Ahmed Johnson, Jake the Snake, and Yokozuna in the six-man tag match with them. That was an awesome match. Then of course you had Austin and Savio Vega. I thought this was another really good feud. Not the best, but another really good feud. And they had some awesome matches. Then of course you had The worst match of the night, which was Triple H and Ultimate Warrior. I liked Ultimate Warrior in the 80s and 90s. In the 80s and 90s. When I was a kid, I liked him in WWE and WCW in WWE and his appearances in WCW. Now that I'm older, I hate his his second WWE run and his WCW run. I think Ultimate Warrior, God rest his soul, but I think he's one of the main reasons WCW isn't here today. Given this guy was the biggest waste of money ever. Of all this guy and Jay Leno, these big money contracts. My opinion, one of the reasons WCW isn't here anymore. But Ultimate Warrior, and he squashed Triple H, and it was just a squash match. There was one cool segment backstage with Mark Mero and Triple H getting into a fight backstage, and then of course then of course, like I said, Ultimate Warrior. I thought he was cool in the '80s and early '90s, but he always sucked, man. And he damn sure didn't fit in this era when they were focusing on Brett and Sean, man. Um, and he just kept disappearing. As a child, I didn't understand, but now that I'm older, I understand why he kept disappearing and what was going on. I now, I now can't stand him. I now can't stand him. That's how I feel. Um, then of course, oh yes, Hollywood Backyard Brawl between Piper and Goldust, one of the very first hardcore matches in this company. Um, then of course you got Undertaker and Diesel, another pretty good match, another one of Diesel's better matches here. Then of course you got um Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels in the Iron Man match. This was a wrestling clinic right here. This was a wrestling clinic right here. Then of course Survivor Series '95, another favorite pay per view of mine, where you had the wild card match and the awesome match between Bret Hart and Diesel. Bret Hart and Diesel, another one of Diesel's better matches in the company. So like I said, you had so much good stuff during this period. The Royal Rumble '97, another awesome pay per view where Austin cheated after Bret Hart eliminated him. The referees didn't see it. Austin came back and eliminated everyone, including Bret Hart, which would kickstart their feud. And then of course Undertaker and Vader locked up here with Paul Bearer turning on Undertaker and supporting Vader. Goldust and Triple H, in my opinion, had a crappy match. I thought this match sucked. Uh, And then of course the Royal Rumble '97 was awesome. I also enjoyed the Lucha Libre match, even though no one really cared for it. And of course the main event, which was the rematch between Shawn Michaels and Sid, where Shawn Michaels beat Sid and retained his belt and avenged his loss from Survivor Series '96. Then of course Survivor Series '96, the debut of Rocky Maivia, the pay-per-view debut of Rocky Maivia. Um, in the match with him being the sole survivor on his team, defeating Goldust and Crush. Then of course you got then of course you got then of course you had Sid Vicious and Sid Vicious and you had Sid Vicious and you had Sid Vicious and Shawn Michaels in the main event for the WWE Championship. You had Bret Hart and Stone Cold Steve Austin in another wrestling clinic. Mankind and Undertaker in I think it was, what match did they wrestle in? I know they wrestled in a match. I can't remember if it was the Boiler Room. Yeah, the Boiler Room Brawl I think was SummerSlam '96. I think this right here, I keep forgetting. Oh yeah, I think this right here was just a normal match. But Undertaker and Mankind. I like how every match was different. Every match was different. Like I said, this was like my favorite era of WWE. Everything was larger than life cartoony, but they mixed it with awesome realistic wrestling. Not as realistic as WCW, which was blowing them out of water, but this was good for this conservative era. And I loved Raw. Raw was always an exciting show. Even though WCW was killing them with these competitive matches, I love the build up to pay per views. I love how they use jobbers instead of jobbing out good talent on the roster nowadays. They use jobbers. They use they used jobbers, and these were surprisingly, despite WWE not being known for competitive matches, these jobber matches actually looked competitive. Actually looked competitive, competitive. So like I said, just an just a just an awesome period. Just an awesome period. Now let's get to the bad. Let's get to the bad. Of course, the Click. I have to mention them already. The Click. In '95, in '95, Diesel as champion 1 year, 1 year as Diesel as champion for 1 year. This was one of the reasons they were losing ratings and nearly killed the company. You have Vince McMahon who couldn't see, who's still thinking with that size mentality, big man size mentality. Couldn't recognize that no one wanted to see that no more. People want in the '90s. People want to see technical wrestling. These larger than life big man. That was the '80s, man. Even Hogan in the '90s wasn't that big. He was huge in the '80s, but not in the '90s. In the '90s, he looks like somebody's uncle, and now he looks like somebody's grandpa now. Now, um, so yeah, the Click, um, running things in '95 with wrestlers like Bret Hart and Undertaker. They got a few. They got a few with mid carders. You have Bret Hart feuding with Jerry King Lawler, Hakushi, Isaac Yankem, Isaac Yankem, and John Pierre Lafitte. You know what? Bret Hart made these. He made these. This shows you how great Bret Hart was. He made these feuds awesome. These were some awesome, exciting matches, especially at In Your House. What I think was one of the first In Your House pay-per-views where he had that awesome match with Hikushi. Then he had awesome matches with John Pierre Lafitte. I think he wrestled all three of them in one night. I think he wrestled Jerry Key Lawler last. Yeah. The Click running things. The Click running things, and Vince McMahon constantly screwing Bret Hart just like he does with Daniel Bryan, Punk, and the young guys today. Constantly trying to go back to the big man. It's instead of focusing, instead of accepting that this is what people wanted to see. This is what instead of accepting that this is what people Bret Hart is what people wanted. Bret Hart wasn't that much of a draw here in the United States, but he draw internationally, domestic lead. I think half of it is Bret Hart's fault. He couldn't live up to Hulk Hogan, and by this point, this is where Vince McMahon, once again, he killed wrestling by admitting it was fake. So but I also feel it was also Vince not trusting Bret and Owen and them, Owen Hart and them, and kept trying to go back to the big man type wrestler. Kept trying to go back to the big man type wrestler. Hell, if you want to use a big man, even Taker or hell, my favorite Bigelow would have been better choices. Been better choices. So yeah, the Click. Oh yeah, all the cartoonish gimmicks. Even though these cartoonish gimmicks, some of them I enjoy, but you had Duke the Dumpster, a dumpster man. One of the funnier lines was when Jerry King Lawler was feuding with him. He said, "How can anyone admire a garbage man?" That was just hilarious. And yeah, a dumpster gimmick. What kind of gimmick is that? You also had Bastion Booger, that crappy gimmick, and then you had um Bando Altoya. Even though I actually thought Just Incredible was awesome during this period, but crappy gimmick. Then you had Johnny Apollo, Ravens gimmick, garbage. Scott Levy, Ravens, one of his earlier gimmicks, garbage. Johnny Apollo, he had some good matches whenever he wrestled, but it was garbage. That gimmick was garbage. Um, Dusty Rhodes and the polka dots. I enjoyed Dean Douglas. I thought that was good, but once again, a burial of an awesome, underrated talent. I actually enjoyed Dean Douglas. I thought that was a cool gimmick. So, but that's another example. Austin as the ringmaster, even though I enjoyed that. Rocky by Via. You had a babyface in an era where gangster rap was become gangster rap, and bands like Nirvana were hugely popular. You bring out that. You try to bring out Rock as an old school babyface. Yeah, but in the '80s this would have worked, but not here in the '90s where everything was becoming edgy. Yeah. But I actually enjoyed that. I actually enjoy that gimmick. So that was that was that was the bad. And this is one of the reasons WCW was kicking your butt. WCW had the top guys, had the top workers like top guys like Hogan, Luger, Macho Man. Then he had young, exciting workers at that time like Bill Waugh, Eddie Guerrero, Jerry Lynn, briefly before he was fired, Alex Wright, and you're bringing out stuff like the Godwins, Duke the Dumpster Droese, Mantar. Another, I actually enjoyed Mantar. He was like a cartoonish UFC fighter, MMA fighter, 90s MMA fighter. But you bring out a human dinosaur, a guy in a dinosaur costume. Then, oh yes, what I also hated, and this made me hate him even more, constantly making fun of Hulk Hogan and Macho Man after all the stuff they did for your company, just because they weren't wrestling in your company anymore with that Billionaire Ted crap, which actually inspired Billionaire Ted to hate you even more and compete with you even more. The Billionaire Ted, the Billionaire Ted segments, including the first one was funny where Vince said, can you guys do this? They show the young guys doing moves. They show the young guys doing moves, and Hogan and Macho Man were like, "Oh no, we can't. We're old. We can't do that. Our feet doesn't leave the ground." And then Vince said, then the billionaire Ted guy said. Then the billionaire Ted guy said, "Is there anything you guys can do?" And they started dancing. It was hilarious. But the second one, when they were wrestling in wheelchairs, and when they were walking to the ring with walkers, that was disgusting. And F Vince McMahon for that garbage, yeah, this was an awesome underrated time period. You hear people talking about the Attitude Era. I thought the Attitude Era was overrated. I'm going to be talking more why I thought it was overrated in another video. But this was my salute of what I consider to be one of the best eras of all time. So many awesome characters, so many awesome storylines, and so many awesome, phenomenal wrestling matches. All right, Doug out.